All right, welcome to your briefing. Today, we're going to break down a really critical and frankly exploding corner of the clean energy world, the solar thermal market. If you're looking for the next big growth story in decarbonization, well, you're in exactly the right place. Let's get into it. Let's just start with a number, shall we? $72 billion. That's what the global solar thermal market is projected to be worth by 2035. Look, this isn't just some small incremental growth. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how the world generates heat. And that, right there, represents a massive investment opportunity. And you can see that trajectory right here on this chart. We're looking at a jump from just over $30 billion today to more than $72 billion in about a decade. That's a compound annual growth rate of over 8%. And let me be clear, this isn't just wishful thinking. This is a trend being powered by some very real, very powerful global forces that we're about to unpack. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the big opportunity. Then we'll get into the two main technologies. After that, we'll look at what's driving all this growth and zoom in on the key industrial market. Finally, we'll cover the risks, the rewards, and then pull it all together into a clear investment thesis for you. So let's start there. That $72 billion opportunity. What are we actually talking about when we say solar thermal? At its core, the technology is a solar thermal collector. And it's simple, really. It's a device that captures sunlight to generate heat. Not electricity, but heat. Think of it as a direct, low-carbon replacement for burning fossil fuels. This is so important because, while solar PV gets all the headlines for electricity, this technology tackles the enormous global demand for heat. That's a huge piece of the decarbonization puzzle that often gets overlooked. Now, here's the thing. Not all of these collectors are the same. The market's really split down two fundamental paths, and each one has a totally different profile from an investment standpoint. Let's break down how they work. The easiest way to think about the difference is with a really simple analogy. Non-concentrating collectors, they're kind of like a dark surface left out in the sun. They absorb heat broadly and pretty efficiently at lower temperatures. Concentrating collectors, on the other hand, they're like a magnifying glass, focusing all that sunlight onto a tiny point to generate incredibly high temperatures. And that difference is everything when you're talking about applications. So here's where the rubber meets the road. Those non-concentrating types, like flat plate collectors, they're everywhere in the residential space, mostly because they're cheaper. But for industry, the real game changer is the concentrating collector. We're talking about parabolic troughs that can get hotter than 400 degrees Celsius. Why does that matter? Well, think about industrial processes, sterilizing food, driving chemical reactions. They need that kind of intense, consistent heat. That's something the non-concentrating guys just can't deliver. So what's really lighting a fire under this 8% growth? Well, it isn't just one thing. It's more like a perfect storm of major trends, all coming together to create the ideal conditions for this market to just take off. First, you've got these really aggressive decarbonization goals, like the EU Green Deal, that are forcing industries to change. Second, and this is a big one, how are companies supposed to deal with fossil fuel prices that are not only soaring, but are also wildly unpredictable? They're scrambling for stable alternatives. You add to that some major tech improvements, like hybrid systems and digital monitoring, plus a whole wave of government subsidies, and, well, you've got a market that's absolutely primed for explosive growth. And this quote from our research really sums it up perfectly. This is no longer just about being green, it's a hard-nosed economic decision. For a factory manager, solar thermal is becoming an insurance policy against crazy energy markets. Now that is a powerful, powerful reason to adopt. And that leads us right to the heart of this whole opportunity. Because while using this for homes is fine and steady, the real engine of growth, this segment creating the most value for investors, is absolutely the industrial market. The demand for industrial process heat is just blowing past every other segment. Industries like food processing, chemicals, textiles, they use a staggering amount of heat. And they are now moving aggressively to swap out their old fossil fuel boilers for solar thermal because it cuts their emissions and their operating costs. It's a double win. And look, this isn't just some forecast. It's happening right now. The big players are making serious moves. You've got Weissman rolling out digital monitoring to make these systems more reliable. Bosch is scaling up massive solutions for district heating. And then you have innovators like TVP Solar, raising serious capital specifically to build those high-temperature collectors that industry needs. The trend is real. Okay, but let's be realistic. No investment briefing is complete without looking at the challenges. So let's talk about the potential hurdles and pinpoint where the biggest opportunities are popping up around the globe. The roadblocks really depend on where you are in the world. In mature economies, say in Europe, the big problem is often the huge cost and complexity of retrofitting. I mean, just imagine trying to bolt a new solar thermal system onto a 100-year-old factory. It can be an engineering nightmare. But then you look at emerging economies, and it's a totally different hurdle. There, the main issue is usually just finding the money for the high upfront investment. You can have a great project that stalls just because there's no good financing available. But here's the flip side. For every one of those risks, there's a huge opportunity. So where's the value being created? It's in tech, like digital monitoring that makes systems work better. It's in hybrid systems that give you both heat and power. And it's definitely in the rise of green financing and climate funds that are finally plugging those investment gaps. The core drivers are still incredibly strong, especially for big district heating projects and high-temperature industrial uses. So, where in the world is all this happening? Well, right now, Europe is leading the pack, mostly thanks to its ambitious green policies. But the real story, the place you want to watch for future growth, is the Asia-Pacific region. With its rapid industrialization, massive government support, and just a huge manufacturing base, countries like China and India are poised to become the absolute epicenter of this technology. All right, let's boil this all down. What's the final, actionable takeaway for anyone looking to capitalize on this market? It really comes down to 4 key things. 1, target the industrial sector. That's where the fastest growth and the highest value is. 2, focus on Asia-Pacific. That's where industrial demand and policy are creating a once-in-a-generation opportunity. 3, leverage the right technology. We're talking high-temp concentrating collectors and smart digital systems. And finally, number 4, capitalize on policy. Align your investments with the strong government incentives that are providing the powerful tailwinds to really make this market fly. So I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. As the entire world races to decarbonize and focuses so much on electrifying everything, could it be that clean heat is actually the most critical and maybe the most overlooked pillar of the whole green transition? All the data we're seeing suggests it just might be.